So let's talk about attention. As I mentioned earlier, not all attention is the same. Selective attention is focusing on a specific aspect of an experience that is relevant while ignoring others, such as listening to the person who is speaking to you and ignoring the voices of the other people in the room. Divided attention is concentrating on more than one activity at a time, such as having a conversation while driving. Sustained attention, also called vigilance, is maintaining focus on something over a prolonged period, such as keeping a constant eye on your kids at the beach. And executive attention is what you use when you're focusing on planning, goals, and possibilities. It's what you use when you know you're going to take a trip in a few weeks and need to make all the appropriate arrangements. Do you know how to get there? Does someone need to get your mail or feed your cat while you're gone? Does your car need maintenance before you take it on the road? Do you need a reservation? All of these things. Now, our ability to pay attention changes as we age. As infants, we don't have very long attention spans, and that's normal. The way sustained attention presents itself in infants is in the form of habituation and dishabituation. If you grew up in a large family, then chances are good that it was never perfectly quiet when the youngest baby was sleeping. The baby is so accustomed to all the hustle and bustle, though, that they no longer pay attention to it and therefore don't react to it. New parents often try to be extremely quiet when their baby is sleeping so that they don't wake the baby up. But inevitably a sound will be made and the baby startles awake. In the case of a large family, the baby has habituated to the noise. Various sounds and voices are repeatedly presented, so the baby doesn't respond much to it anymore. You basically get bored of something. Babies also habituate to toys. If you put all the toys in front of them all at once and keep them out all day, every day, the child loses interest in them. That is habituation. But if you rotate the toys, so that instead of the same toys every day, you keep, let's say, half of them stored in the closet, and you switch them out with the other half of the toys every few days, then the quote-unquote new toys will spark the child's interest again. That is dishabituation. A form of attention that develops around 7 or 8 months of age is joint attention. This is where the baby is able to focus on the same object or event as at someone else. A parent pointing at a flower and saying, "Look at the flower," and then the child looking at the flower is an example of joint attention. This is closely followed by gaze following, in which the child happens to notice that someone is looking at something and they shift their gaze to see what they're looking at. This sort of reciprocal interaction that occurs with joint attention and gaze following is extremely important to language development and vocabulary size, because the baby both hears what the adult is saying and also sees what they're talking about. Our ability to control our attention gradually increases with age. In preschool, our attention control is still pretty low. If you have ever worked with preschoolers, you know that they can't stick with a task for more than a few minutes before they start getting the wiggles. It helps to give them specific tasks to do, such as holding up a picture of a pig whenever you say, little pig, let me in," when you're reading The Three Little Pigs, and having them wave their arms when you say, "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in." These are salient stimuli that are easier for them to pay attention to. Also, when preschool children are asked to compare two pictures, they tend to approach the task haphazardly, without examining all the details first. By the time children are 7, though, they are much better at engaging in executive and sustained attention, and they are more likely to systematically compare the details across the pictures, one picture at a time. However, there are always individual differences in attention, as well as differences arising from early experiences or lack thereof. As we enter adolescence, we become better at filtering out irrelevant information to focus on main ideas, and we also get better at switching tasks. As young children, we have a hard time stopping when someone told us it's time to do something else. This isn't as much of a problem anymore in adolescence, except for people with executive processing disorders. Adolescents also get better at multitasking. Unfortunately, they also tend to expand the number of tasks that they're doing, resulting in greater levels of distraction during activities that should be done with undivided attention, such as driving or studying. As we approach later adulthood, it becomes more difficult to focus our attention. It may be difficult to understand someone in a crowded restaurant, not necessarily because you can't hear them, but rather because it is more difficult to ignore the other voices and sounds in the room. If you haven't already, this is when you start to turn off the music when you're trying to focus on what the road signs say, so that there isn't so much stimuli competing for your attention. Sticking to familiar routes, familiar restaurants, and familiar activities also helps reduce our cognitive load, because familiar things have become more automatic and therefore don't require as much effortful processing.